I forgot what I said last year, but obviously worked. And in these sort of worrying, challenging and exciting times, that's only me with that topic actually. So thank you very much for asking me to look at no-till again. I'm approaching it with an open mind, which is what I'm sure you want me to do. So what we're going to do is to look to where are we now. Some of the slides, some of you may have seen me talk about in other talks, etc. Is the current system sustainable? Some of the main problems, some answers, and then we're going to talk about some benchmarking for base, which is hopefully quite exciting. Some future thoughts, and in the half an hour, I've also got some notes from Cambridge, some research work from Cambridge University, which Jim Orson shared with me last week at a conference. Okay, so just to move on then, so I'm not apologising for using this again. So if I can go forward. Well, there we go, yeah. So what is happening? So arable farming, basically we benchmark around about 100,000 acres in the east, and mainly conventional farming, and we're looking at rural businesses as opposed to arable farming. Businesses have moved on and diversified, rental income, etc. Farmers to rural businessmen and women. So that's the sort of change that we've seen. But just in the arable side, let's have a look. Where are we now? Not apologising for using this again, which some of you may have seen. So basically, this is my slide on running to stand still. And so on a treadmill, some of you have seen these before. I've changed some of them. So we've got labour and machinery, which is a key cost in our businesses, which I'll be talking about later on. If we have our own labour and we own our own machinery, we've got to make the best use of it. Yield is king, I had last year. This time it's economic yield we need to be looking at, I think, rather than yield is king. Then we have many clients who've been dashing for a land grab, paying key money, and over the last 18 months to 2 years actually retrenching back again. So that's been quite interesting. So spreading fixed costs, finding they're not spreading, just increasing and coming back. And all supported by EU payments, of course. So that's where we are now. So I think coming up to is no-till the Brexit answer. So is it sustainable and viable, yes or no? And I just want to relate back to an earlier speaker who's sitting at the front here now, Simon, who this morning, I listened to you this morning, and you said, get on with it. Numbers look after themselves if you just get on with it. Okay, so we'll see. And I think your overdraft disappeared by magic. Yeah. So it worked for you, but I think we need to probably need to look at a bit more numbers than just letting it happen, possibly. I don't know, we'll see. So one of the biggest problems we have got in the last couple of seasons is machinery capital. Okay, sorry for you chaps, I'll move around. It's machinery capital, and this is a very strong thing to say. This is destroying viability, and I think it is. We have got capital in terms of value of machinery, in which you could call deferred rust, but you wouldn't tell the bank manager that. Value in machinery, nor a manufacturer that either actually, are over £300. Sorry, I mean still in acres, but I can do both. But capital per acre of £330 in the current benchmarking we're doing. Now that rises to so gives about £60 an acre depreciation. We'll see more of that bit later on. Which is destroying the viability. It's just not adding up. And this is where people take on more land to try to spread it a bit further. It works for a season or so, and then probably doesn't. So the actual capital tied up in the no-till benchmarking group that I've got, I will show you a bit later on. Okay, so just clock the £330 an acre tied up in machinery in a full full-blown ploughing system, etc., where there's a lot of kit around. Okay, so one answer possibly is collaboration. Okay, so I'm not into no-till yet, it's just collaboration on its own. Building up to it, Edwin, okay? JV, joint ventures, and I do a lot of this sort of work. I'm putting together at the moment 2,000-3,000 acre units in Cambridgeshire to form one 6,000 unit, and this is not no-till, this is just purely collaboration. One of the answers to Brexit is what many farmers think. And so we have here, we've got a machinery syndicate there, which is an LLP, Limited Liability Partnership, and then we have a cropping share farming. This is the acreages, or the hectares, the hectare percentages of the 4 farms involved. Okay, and we've been running those, I think the longest one, I had an AGM recently, 20 years. We have one that's been going for 20 years, exactly like that, and it works really, really well. They have had to take on more land to try to justify the machinery and to keep the machinery down per hectare, take on more land, but that is doable when you have got this structure behind you. On your own, obviously, it may not be working so well. So that is one answer, and that is what a lot of the industry are doing, is collaboration. I wouldn't say that contract farming works. On average, in our normal standard benchmarking, contract farming has a negative margin. Where the income from contract farming over the past couple of seasons has been lower than the power and machinery costs, labour, power and machinery costs in total on a per hectare basis. So it has not been working, but this is where the dash for land grab you take on a bit more possibly. And this is the treadmill situation that we are on. Okay, I'll just show you some figures on joint ventures. So we've got machinery syndicates on the left-hand side, and then RBS is not Royal Bank of Scotland in the middle, it's Rural Business Survey. Top 25 in the middle, on the right-hand side is the average. Okay, so labour recharges, about the same. We have management fees coming into the syndicates on the left. So 39, 35, 39. This is where the key is, machinery depreciation, 30 compared to 52 and 67. Okay, spares and repairs, contract and hire, fuel. Total labour and machinery, 135 on the left-hand side there in machinery syndicates. So it is an answer to Brexit, and I firmly believe it is an answer to Brexit as collaboration. But I guess what you could do is add no-till and collaboration together, which would be pretty magic. Steve's smiling and nodding down there. That's a possibility as well. And I think a collaboration joint venture between some no-till farmers would be quite exciting. Okay, so I just want to move on now. I'm ahead of time, actually. I started early. Good. So I just want to move on now to talk about the figures I presented at Groundswell last year, and just to give you a little bit of what's happening in the Groundswell group that we've set up. So I'll just show you where we're at with those, which should be that. Groundswell agronomy. Okay, discussion workshops. So a bit of history, and this is an example, I think, of how exciting it can be in terms of no-till, and it's sharing knowledge. So the history, 2017, we collected the harvest data, which we presented at Groundswell, and you may recall that the cost of production per tonne on the no-till group was lower than conventional on the wheat, just on the wheat. We ignored the other crops for that actual number to put forward. So then we had a farm meeting. Okay, we had a farm meeting in the autumn 18 after the Groundswell show in June on one of the members' farms, and we had went through the numbers, etc. And everybody in the group opened up to exactly what they were doing and to justify. And I was asking every member, why was that low? Why is that figure high in terms of the financials? And then in the last few months, we have collected the 18 harvest. We've just started collecting 18 harvest, and we're in the process of collecting 18 harvest now in a group of about a dozen farmers. Some of you farmers are here, okay? Some of you farmers, one or two farmers who are actually joining us are here as well, who we haven't collected the data from yet. We did have a farm meeting in January where we had some, one of the members hosted us really well. We chatted through production of winter and spring wheat there. The next farm meeting is in early June, the first week in June, on the farm, walking around and looking to see how that member works. And then full results will be presented in Groundswell 19. Okay, so, and I think this is working really, really well in terms of we are actually, obviously you're here and hearing everything in this conference here, but actually sitting down as a group of up to a dozen farmers, I think works really well, and you can get into the detail. Okay, so the thinking is now is that we have some benchmarking available for base. And I've been talking to Steve in particular, and Edwin as well, and Rebecca, about how we could do this. And obviously with the Groundswell benchmarking group, I actually go around and collect all the data. But you are all over the country. So what we have done, we have put together, so we as myself, we have put together a website to collect the data. With the experience we've had of collecting the 17 and 18 harvest data in the Groundswell group, we've actually now hopefully pulled all that together into a website that it will be available for base members only. Okay, and it's looking at the economics of conservation agriculture, and there are handouts. I think Rebecca has put some details on the tables, some little cards on the tables, and a form to fill in on the tables. So if anybody is interested, either go to the website or come back to me. I'm here for the rest of the day. I'll fill out the form and give it back to Rebecca. And I was going to have my prop, but Edwin's just stolen my props. Sorry. That's all right? Apologise. I'm joking. So, yeah, they look like this. So it's a little card like that. Okay, and then there's a handout like this on the table. So if you're interested, please, you can have these back now, Edwin. If you're interested, please fill them in or contact us. So hopefully we'll be able to use that. There is a cost to this because we have had to pay to pull the website together. The cost is £90 to get into the website, and then you're off after that, plus VAT, £90 plus VAT. You get the VAT back, of course. Okay, so, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so I hope you're going to be interested in that. And if we can get many of you or several of you entering data into that, we can look forward to start working together, perhaps organised groups or whatever, the same sort of concept, but it's going to be difficult. You'll have to do it, some of you do it yourselves, etc. So it's a concept of knowledge sharing. This is what we are looking to get hold of. Ploughing to no-till, where you are roughly. So we have got a couple of people joining the Groundswell agronomy group now who are just about to start on no-till. Okay, so that's going to give us an indication of how that works, of starting off from a varied tillage system into no-till. So there's two of those joining at the moment, for quite fairly largish farmers. So where you are and why, we try to find a bit of background as to why people are doing it. I think the last time most of it was economic reasons. Livestock, obviously we have a mix of livestock as part of the concept of conservation agriculture. The drill's quite important, list of machinery, labour availability, the labour profile we'll be looking at as well, crops and areas, and soil type. So that's the sort of information, background information we'll be gathering on the website. Okay, and then we'll be producing, the figures come back to you on the website, but some of these extra bits will be coming back to you via newsletters. Okay, so that's the thinking behind it. So this is something I'm really very interested in doing, and I hope you are as well. So in terms of some of the other information we're collecting will be the physical financial information. So the 18 harvest we're talking about now. So if we can look at the costs for the 18 harvest. So most of the costs, apart from the variable costs, should come from your annual accounts. And then the gross margin will come from your crop records, I hope. So not from the annual accounts, and there's a reason, an accounting reason behind that. So we have all the information as true as possible, not mixing harvests up is the main point. Okay, so you can see all the different points there, down to crops and areas and soil types at the very bottom as well. Okay, so and going back to machinery then. So something we'll be looking at is a list of your machinery with your horsepower, current value, the current age, and also how much is livestock versus arable. And this is something we'll be thinking about as we move along, because obviously much of the livestock is part of the arable in terms of conservation agriculture. So it's fairly new for everybody, of course, in terms of recording this, but hopefully we'll be pulling it together and getting it as authentic as possible to enable us to assess what we're doing. A capital budget sheet is not on the website. We have not put that on. We're just collecting the data. We try to keep it as simple as possible. It's something I would like to introduce at a later stage, possibly, for base members. So capital budgeting, some of you do this, I know, and some of you don't, I guess, but quite a few of my clients in conventional farming clients actually use capital budget sheeting, because as I said, this one of the key drivers of profitability is the value of machinery actually in the on a per hectare or a per acre basis. Okay, so going back to some of the reasons why we are here. You'll remember I mentioned we're on the treadmill, etc., and where yield is king, and we need to be looking at economic yield rather than just that yield itself. One of the other key things in conventional farming before we move into the no-till system is, because people are running to stand still, and you've heard me say this probably, some of you have heard me say this before, that there are personal pressures on the family. Okay, so that's one of the biggest problems we've got in farming nowadays as we're heading towards Brexit. People are worried, etc. So personal pressures leads to family stress, okay, which leads to dysfunctional communication, which leads to poor profits. And the biggest, and when you get to a farming situation in a family where it gets to that stage, the key driver of profitability or lack of profitability is a dysfunctional family. Okay, and I think that's one of the biggest, and we do have a lot of stress in the industry, as we know, farm network crisis, people, etc. So we do have a lot of stress in the industry at the moment, and I think that's quite an important point in terms of conservation agriculture versus running to standstill agriculture. Okay, so and the family obviously comes first. So I think that's quite an important point to make. So moving on then to, and I think we have now got some numbers. We should be. So these are the 18 results. So this is very early indication. There are huge variations. We've just got the 18 harvest on the left-hand side. We can only compare with the 17 harvest, unfortunately, in terms of gross margin in our national survey, our Eastern Region survey, etc. So we have got gross output 359, okay, compared to over 400, and that's risen quite a lot from the 17 harvest. Actually, it's a fairly smallish group at the moment. These are just indication figures. Remember, variable costs are lower because of, as we've heard from other speakers, gross margin obviously is lower. Key points are coming out now. Obviously, the labour is very similar actually as it was last year in the 17 harvest. But the key point is here. It is this one. That's 31. That's 38. 38 compared to 66, 64. That's the key difference. And this goes back to the machinery, the capital value machinery. So what we're doing is driving down and bringing down that capital per hectare in machinery. And I did mention that the 66, this early 60s is round about 18% of £330 an acre, compared with no-till at just over 200. So the amount of machinery tied up is £100 less in no-till, and I think that's the biggest message that I've taken out of where we've got so far. Okay, and that's a key. Obviously, we have fuel drop as well. Less machinery, less tractors, less fuel. Okay, less fuel coming out here. 22, 29, down to 11. Key point, if you can see the bottom, is 99 profit from arable. Early indication, as I said, compared to 103 top 25, 58 average. Now that is a bloody good result, I think. So I'm really, really pleased that I came at this with an open mind. But I think that's a very good message to all of us as to what we're doing, and it seems to be working. So I think the key thing about this, if you want me to answer, whether it's the answer, I've forgotten what the question is actually. What was it? Is no-till the Brexit answer? Okay, is no-till the Brexit answer? So there's a caveat, as there always would be with an accountant. But the answer is yes, but only with knowledge sharing. I think there's such a variation in the results, and going around farmers, a huge variation in results. And we hear some really good stories from speakers, and some of the groundswell people I go and see as well are doing really well, but others, to be honest, are with very much variable results. So yes, but with knowledge, I think that we need the knowledge sharing, and this is why hopefully, well, we have knowledge sharing here, but hopefully this is why the website hopefully will help to get that knowledge sharing as to what some people are achieving, because on your own farm, you think, am I doing well or not? And hopefully this website will deliver that answer. You can actually see your numbers compared to others, and then get to talking to others as well. So the answer is yes, but with the caveats that we need to be sharing knowledge a lot more than just attending the base conference every year. I think there's a lot more to it than that. So I was with Jim Orson earlier on last week, who actually showed me some research that Cambridge University has done recently, which is quite interesting. And it says, new findings suggest that more intensive agriculture might be the least bad option for feeding the world while saving its species. So this is where I come at this from an open mind, because what they're saying is that intensive agriculture is better for the environment, okay, for feeding the world. Because if you take the parameter that we need the food, then it's better to have intensive agriculture on a lower area with higher yields, releasing land for conservation. Now, I think that is thought-provoking when we look at conservation agriculture. And I've heard that point made before on organic farming, actually. So it says scientists, and this is global, it's not just England, but it's, the concept possibly applies to us. So scientists have put together measures for some of the major externalities, such as greenhouse gas emissions. They've looked at everything: fertilizer and water use generated by high and low yield farming systems. And I'm not saying you're a low yield farming system, but the yields are lower inputs, lower yields, but reasonable margins, hence the 99. So low yield farming systems, and compare the environmental costs of producing a given amount of food in different ways. So it's coming at it from food production. If we need that food production, and we need to be growing X million tons of wheat in the UK to export a little bit, etc., we wouldn't be doing that with organic farming, where the yields are a lot lower. I'm not saying we are here, obviously, but lower yields may not work. So previous research compared these costs by land area only, but this is by food production. Whereas high yield farming needs less land to produce the same quantity of food. The study's authors say this approach overestimates its environmental impact. So I'd share that with you. I saw that I picked that up this morning, actually, because Jim showed it to me, mentioned it to me last week. Okay, so where are we? I just want to now end up, in the next few minutes, with some just future opportunity thoughts. And this is some work I've been doing with some forestry and woodland consultants, etc. And looking forward, I've been liaising with the Country Landowners Association, the CLA, as well, on where some of the opportunities will be in the future in terms of where Brexit is happening. So I just want to move forward one slide. So, and this is share farming. I've been doing a lot of work on share farming over the last few months, where I think that share farming works and contract farming doesn't work for various reasons, for the returns of the contractor, but also capital tax is at risk, I think, in contract farming. Future opportunities. We're looking at share farming, and so what I'm doing, I'm looking at farmers coming together. So groups of you, 4 or 5 farmers in an area coming together, because with the new ELM coming, environmental land management coming on board, there's going to be a lot more paperwork, I guess, so higher level schemes and all that sort of thing is going. The environmental part of it is going to continue. So my thinking is, and I've discussed this with several farms now, is that they will collaborate. And this is part of Mr. Gove's thinking as well, and DEFRA's thinking, and the CLA and the NFU, I think, as well, is that you can bring farmers together for farm, woodland, forestry, ELM, which is I call ELM the new crop, in environmental land management, which is probably what we're doing in any case, aren't we? Conservation agriculture. So collaboration on several farms. Public goods and natural capital are words that have been used quite a lot at the moment. Carbon offsetting in the future. The last point I think is really interesting, because, and this is starting to happen, we've got this in Europe at the moment, whereby, and you all know all the houses that are being built, or the government wants to build in the country at the moment, and there's a lot of housing coming on board, having development environmental offsetting, Section 106 agreements, okay, which is the agreements that house builders have to comply by. So if a housing authority is going to be building, or Barratt's or whoever are going to be building 500 houses or 1,000 houses somewhere, they will need some environmental offsets, and they will pay money for environmental offsets. And this is where I think that some farmers may have the opportunities of actually picking out some of their land and farming it environmentally, and the house builders paying for it. Okay, so I think that's some of the opportunities for the future, a bit futuristic thinking, and that is it, Mr. Chairman. Okay, thank you. It was a half an hour talk. So, yeah. Yes, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right. Start the back, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
With your machinery owning syndicates, where do your business labour come from? Is it staff employed by the syndicate, or do they come from individual farms?
Right, good, very good point. What we do, and there's a very good reason for doing this, is that we do not employ staff in the syndicate. Not initially. And the reason for that is it's really interesting how little staff and hours you need to grow crops. Okay. So what we do, we pull the syndicates together, all the machinery. You can work out the machinery you need, start with a blank piece of paper, and you've got staff dotted around on 3 or 4 farms. Okay. And so some of the syndicates are triggered by somebody retiring or somebody giving up, etc. In any case, but then what we do is charge staff in around about £14.50 an hour. Even the farmer, the farmer could be grain carting and playing golf the rest of the year, but you might become grain carting in the summer. £14.50 an hour charging. Then you know how many hours you've got. Second year, you can actually assess how many staff you need. But we normally keep them out all the time because they'll be doing work on the farms, because the syndicate is only for arable farming, and there's other things doing on the farms as well. Okay?
Somebody else at the back, I think.
If I understood correctly, there's a ground wealth benchmarking agreement, and you plan to have a
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can be. Yes, absolutely. So in the Groundswell group, there are Groundswell group members here. Okay, and yes, but in the Groundswell group, we have a lot more detail, and we've started off, and it's part of the Groundswell show. So it's a lot more detail, and it's how we started off. Okay, and we will continue with that group. Okay, but it would be very good, we think, to replicate that. But I can't replicate it. I can't come and collect data. I can collect data from the Groundswell group on my own, drive around Hertfordshire or Bedfordshire and Cambridgeshire, but I can't come to Yorkshire, sorry. Okay, so it's a long way to go. So therefore, we want to replicate it if possible. The only way to replicate it is to use a website. Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah. The Groundswell group is a small group of under 12, and I'd like to think that the base group will be a lot bigger than that. Yeah, that's the point, yeah. And a lot bigger than that initially, and then hopefully that will kick-start another group in Yorkshire, possibly, whoever. Northumberland, sorry. Oh, God. That was it, yeah. There, I'm digging myself out of a hole here, yeah. Yeah, so in other parts of the country, it's the only way we can think of actually doing it. So. But the Groundswell group, as I said, are a lot more detail and local to where I live. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Can I ask you what you think of the AGM benchmarking survey
Yeah.
that tried to promote this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yes, it's fine. Benchmarking is good. I've been benchmarking since 1992 in East Anglia, and we're up to 100,000 acres. So quite a long time, a lot of data, and a lot of my clients have learned a lot out of that benchmarking. HDB, fine, yeah, and it can only be good news. They use slightly different concepts. The key thing about benchmarking is not to have apples and pears, and if you think back to how I said we should be benchmarking in base. So, and I mentioned that the costs of labour, machinery, etc., should come out of your annual accounts. Well, it says it on the website, okay? Not depreciation, because there is no set format for depreciation. I have my own method of depreciation, which I believe is as right as you can get. You can never get it 100%, and I have it across the board with all my clients, okay? So, and we do our own on that. I'll come back to that in a minute. In gross margin, when you've got an annual set of annual accounts up to March year end, you could have 3 harvests in one set of accounts, 3 parts of a harvest in one set of accounts. So that's why you don't use your accounts for doing the gross margin. It needs to come from gatekeeper or crop records. Okay, so this is very, very important then. So in terms of benchmarking. So the way we do benchmarking in Groundswell and will be in base is you put in a list of all your machinery, the value of all your machinery, and then we apply a standard depreciation charge of 15% for everything with an engine and 20% for everything that comes behind. Okay, and so therefore in the base benchmarking, irrespective of what you've got in your annual accounts for depreciation, it'll be the same. And so, HDB have spoken to me because I do quite a lot on monitor farms, and have spoken to me about depreciation. They use a different methodology, which I wouldn't use, but fine. Yeah.
Gary, fantastic.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I do think that it's another important tool for the organisation of base.
Hopefully, yes. Yeah, I'm very excited.
The effort you've put in to try and pull something together.
Yeah. Okay.
I think us as members could get quite a lot out of it. I would have thought, because as you said earlier, the heap's not as big, but it's whether the
Absolutely,
still there.
absolutely,
It's
sure.
having the confidence
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
to continue forward.
Absolutely, yeah. So,
Get in the bag or conservation act.
And the profit is there, look. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it is, but it's just that reassurance.
Yeah, yes, well, and it varies so much.
It's generally not as big.
And the heap is not as big at the top end, no, and that 99 can be negative or positive at the bottom. It's a huge variation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.